Hey friends, Sam Haymart for Test Driven TV. 2 years ago I was standing on this very same spot talking to you about the Mitsubishi Outlander. Now a few things have changed since then. First of all, I'm not wearing the cowboy hat anymore. The marketing people, they said, Sam, you look great in the cowboy hat, but people just don't get the idea of a cowboy talking to them about cars. And really, the same thing was going on at Mitsubishi. They had a vehicle they felt was very solid, but it wasn't selling the way they wanted it to. And they said, we really need to give it a little bit more style, and we need to address the issues that really keep it from being the best it can be. And so, for 2016, that's exactly what we've gotten here. We've got a refresh on this, but they've really paid a lot of attention to details inside and out, as well as gave it some bold new styling. So we're going to test drive it today and see if all of these changes make it a better Outlander. To the new styling, the 2016 Mitsubishi Outlander got a completely new face. Gone is the boring and flat look it had before, replaced with a set of bold chrome grille bars and jeweled headlights they call Dynamic Shield. Our tester, being a top-level SEL with touring package, had halogen headlamps and fog lights to go with its new face, along with LED positioning lamps. Now if you step up to the GT, you get LED headlamps. The Outlander gets handsome new standard 18-inch wheels across the trim line and a new rocker trim with chrome inset that goes a long way to stepping up the curb appeal. At the rear is a new fascia, and the power opening liftgate has a new chrome trim element and LED tail lamps. Inside, Mitsubishi tweaked the trims and materials just a bit, bringing some new soft touch trims to the dash and door panels, a new steering wheel design, and new finishes throughout. Our tester had the top-level touchscreen infotainment system with Rockford Fosgate audio and heated leather seats to boot. When I'm sitting behind the wheel of this, I'd really think I was sitting in a Saab. If there was an ignition switch down here on the console, I'd be completely convinced. Just the overall look and feel, the way this is laid out, it just feels like sort of a vintage Saab. It's got that vibe going on. But what I like about it is the seating position's good, and you really do feel like you're in a car, not really so much an SUV. Not a bad thing. I'm not one of these people that feels like I have to be up in an SUV. It just has a nice, comfortable feel, and the vision out is pretty good. And I like some of the finishes they've done this time around as well. Whenever they do piano black in cars, which is very popular right now, when it gets dusty, it looks dustier. If you get fingerprints on it, it looks like there's fingerprints. But what they've done here is this actually has a little bit of a metallic in that piano black. So, well, it already looks dusty. So that way when it does get dusty, not so bad. So I like that, and I like the finish over here that they've done on the door and on the dash here. It's not fake wood. It sort of looks like maybe it could be some kind of an inlay, like a metal or a plastic or a stone inlay, but it's not trying to be anything that it isn't. It's just a nice piece of trim with a nice pattern on it. Very nice. These seats here, very comfortable. They've got nice side bolsters on them, but they're not too tight. They've got a nice firmness to them. They feel very businesslike. Now, for long trips, some people like softer seats. I tend to like these sports seat, sort of these German feeling stiff seats like this, and that's exactly what they are. It's just really a good, comfortable place to be, combined with a good seating position. All right, so now the back seat's always a big part of the test drive experience. I've got to get back here, see how it feels so that you can see how it feels. Now, I'm about 5'8", 5'9", so what you're looking at right here is I've got a couple of inches of headroom here. That's good. Lots of leg room, and the seats here, they're about halfway from all the way back and all the way forward. Now, there are a couple of things missing back here. The first thing I noticed, there are no HVAC vents. There's no ports back here for anything. Certainly not heated seats. This isn't really super upmarket, so I'm not really going to ding it for that. Now, there is a fold-down armrest here, which is nice, and these seat backs, they do recline and they do slide because there is a third row back there, so those are all nice things. And the other nice thing is that this seat is actually high enough that your knees aren't perched up, something I always really key in on, because a lot of these crossovers, you're sitting down in them and your knees are up. So this is actually a pretty comfortable place to be if there's going to be just two of you back here. If there's going to be a third person in the center, I notice that you do tend to feel like you're sitting on that seat belt right there. It can really kind of poke into your butt there a little bit, and especially on this side over here.
And one other thing I want to show you is that folding these things down can be kind of a little bit of a chore. Now, one thing I do want to point out here is these are a little bit on the chintzy side. Both of these seats kind of have this strange springiness to them. Both of these seats kind of have this strange springiness, springing. Now, one thing I want to point out here is both of these seats, these lower cushions here, have this weird springiness to them. They're just a little bit chintzy, but when you go to fold these things down, there's a couple of things going on. First of all, they do both slide forward, just like this, to allow access to the third row. That's a great thing. It's nice to have that feature on both sides. Now, if you actually want to put these seats down, first you do the headrest here, and then there's a thing down here. You know, it works. It's just a little springy. But anyway, then you put this down. Works pretty good, but sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes I've noticed it hangs up there just like that. And what's weird is there's actually a sticker here that tells you what to do if the seat back doesn't fold down right. Sort of an odd little thing. Evidently it doesn't work right sometimes, and there has to be instructions to tell you how to do it over so that it'll work right. And basically what it tells you to do is you put everything back up, then you carefully follow the instructions to put it all down again, and then it works. So I don't know, it works sometimes, it doesn't work sometimes, but that's how you fold the seats down. Now it's time to get into that third row and see how that works. I'm gonna slip in here. Okay. All right. I'm back here. Now, as you can see, this really isn't a place for adults. This is primarily a seat for kids. Now, this seat and the one on the side, as I already said, they do slide, they do adjust, which is necessary. This is about halfway forward, halfway back, so it can go forward just a little bit more. So if you absolutely had to put adults back here, you probably could. But where it's at right now, just looking up there, whomever's going to be sitting here in the second row as it is right now, not going to have a whole lot of room. What worries me most about this third row is the fact that these headrests right here are almost right up against the back window. There's not a lot of distance between the seat back here and the rear bumper. So if we were involved in a moderate rear collision, you really wouldn't want to have anyone back here. I probably wouldn't even want kids back here. But that said, it is a place people can sit in a pinch.
Now, while I picked on the folding rear seat, it is a new design for this year, improved even over last year to be easier to use than before. Nonetheless, once you get the hang of it and get all rows folded down, you're rewarded with a perfectly flat cargo deck, and a sizable one at that. The Rockford Fosgate subwoofer does take some space at the rear, but there's still a nice underfloor storage area behind the third row that makes for a nice place for its headrests. There's a full-size spare as well, located underneath. The interior wins decent marks from me on its fit and finish, the material quality, and its overall design. Now, I picked on the folding seats a bit and that cramped third row, but overall it earns 4 out of 5 stars.
Now, this infotainment system this year, they said they made some improvements to it, and quite honestly, I'm not seeing a lot of differences between the last time I drove one of these, but the great thing about it is it's got a volume knob, it's got a tuning knob, and it has buttons on it, and that always beats touchscreen to me. I'm old-fashioned, I guess, but, you know, it's just so much easier to reach over and turn a knob than it is to hunt and peck around. And yes, there are buttons over here on the steering wheel, and it is well done on the controls here, but when you're driving along and you're maybe frustrated and you're in a hurry, knobs are great. One thing I do want to point out is there's a nice cubby down here for your phone that it fits most phones. It's large enough that unless you've got some big huge thing, that's going to work pretty good. Now, what there isn't, there's no USB port here. There's no USB port there. Usually that's where you want to have it so you can plug in and charge, or if you're going to connect. They do have a USB port, but it's down inside here, buried in the box, and that's just inconvenient. It's nice to be able to throw your phone down there, plug it in, be on your way. Okay, we have to talk about this lane departure warning. It's great. It's a wonderful feature that, no, it's probably going to save a life somewhere. But the problem with this one is it's on every time you start the car. So if you forget that it's there and you just decide you're going to change lanes here, it's going to scare the crap out of you if you're not expecting it. And you can't adjust the sound. It's just on or it's off. Now you can reach down here and turn it off, but you have to every time you get in the car because it's on every time you get in the car. Now, some people like the electronic mother-in-law in the back seat, nannying you every time you get in the car and you don't drive right. I don't. So there's type A, there's type B. Some people like this kind of stuff, some people don't. At least provide an off switch so if you own the car, you don't have to hate the thing.
In all fairness, the driver assistance systems, which include lane departure warning and forward collision warning with auto braking, do function quite well. The fact they default to on, it's just a pet peeve of mine. These systems combined with an infotainment system that's good and a great audio quality bring a total score for technology to 4 or 5 stars. Under the hood of our front-wheel drive Outlander SCL was the standard engine, a 2.4-liter 4-cylinder which comes only with a constantly variable transmission, or CVT. It does run on regular unleaded and offers 166 horsepower.
I'm not going to get a shift. This is a CVT, a constantly variable transmission. They just have that rubber band kind of feel, and this one for some reason has kind of a, dare I say it, springiness in its shifts. It has a tug and pull. It has a tug and pull in its shifts, not springiness. When it shifts, oh, wait a minute, it doesn't shift. It's the CVT, it doesn't shift. So the thing never shifts, all right? You're driving along and you step on the gas and the motor just sort of drones on, kind of like I'm doing right now about the CVT. I just don't care for them that much, folks. I like the feel of a traditional transmission that shifts, so you don't feel like you're waiting for something to happen when you're stepping on the gas. You're not going, is it working? Is it gonna shift? Basically what happens is these companies do what they've done here is they program them to give you a simulated shift point. And so once in a while, not all the time, just once in a while, this will give you a simulated shift point. But they're not when you'd predict, they're not when you'd expect, they're just sort of whenever. And so it doesn't give you the traditional feel of a transmission, it just sort of makes you feel something's even more wrong with it. It just never shifts when you want it to, and then it shifts when you're not expecting it. So some people aren't bothered by CVTs. I am. So if you're not one of those people, you're going to enjoy this vehicle. If you are, I suggest you option the V6 because it comes with a traditional automatic transmission.
Again, all the complaining aside about the CVT, that transmission is largely what's responsible for the Outlander's commendable fuel economy. It's rated by the EPA at 25 mpg city, 31 mpg highway, and 27 mpg combined, and that's exactly what I achieved with it in my time. Power from the 4-cylinder engine is adequate, but the CVT sends driving enjoyment to that springy back seat, so scoring the powertrain comes in at 3 out of 5 stars. Moving on to the ride and drive experience, Mitsubishi made numerous improvements to the chassis, starting with increased structural rigidity and a retuned suspension. Quiet tuning's been done by adding an acoustic windshield and rear door glass, and a good deal more sound insulation throughout the interior.
What I found here is even though the suspension and chassis changes they've made are pretty minor ones that we might even have a hard time finding in a parts catalog, the bottom line is it does have a more refined feel. It just feels of a better quality. So what does that mean? It means it feels like it's a little bit quieter, feels like it's a little bit better isolated from some of the staccato bumps and some of the patches and the pavement, that kind of thing. It just has an overall feel of being, well, more refined.
I'm pretty impressed in the chassis department for not only the improvements made, but because this is a crossover SUV that's not so large and heavy that it feels like a cargo ship. It's nimble enough to be rewarding to drive, and it's easy to live with, earning it 4 or 5 stars here. The solid feel comes from somewhere, and according to the IIHS, the structural design has a lot to do with it. They gave it their highest honor of Top Safety Pick Plus due to it earning good on their full range of crash tests and its available crash prevention systems. The Outlander in the larger picture impressed me well with a level of quality, fit, and finish that's above many of its competitors I've tested this year. If you read its window sticker, it's built in Japan with 100% Japanese parts content. That must mean something, as even with a springy back seat, it earns 4 or 5 stars for quality feel.
Now, I know some of you are probably asking yourself, why does this guy put bloopers in his test drive video? Is he trying to be funny? No, I'm actually trying to illustrate a point because I picked on some of the imperfections in this vehicle, that being the back seat, the nanny minder, and the dash, and the bottom line is this: no vehicle is perfect, but neither am I. I make mistakes and I have to do things over again. But like you, I get up every day and I try to do things to make myself a better person, maybe to be better at what I do. I'm willing to change it up a little bit. And it's clear to me that Mitsubishi does the same thing with their products. This vehicle here is far better than the Outlander I tested in 2014. And really, that's what it's all about. It may not be an all-new vehicle from the ground up, but it's improved. Even though it has a couple little things I'd still like to see a little bit better. But in that way, let's get to the specs here. Here we're at just right around $31,000. I think that's a pretty good value, to be honest with you, because there aren't very many three-row crossovers at this price, and there aren't very many three-row crossovers you can get with a 4-cylinder engine. Now, of course, the V6 is an option, but if you want fuel economy and the capability when you need it, your choices are actually pretty narrow out there. So I think that gives it a value of about 4 out of 5 stars. When you put that in with everything else we've already talked about, we're at 4 stars for the week. I'm Sam Haymart for Test Driven TV. I hope you enjoyed the ride. Well, folks, if you enjoyed the test drive you just saw, click on the link right there. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We test drive 1, sometimes 2 cars each week. Plus, we have a new video almost every single day. There's always something new. So stay tuned.